Good morning. I'm Dana Magliola, Senior Director of Infrastructure Competitiveness at the North Carolina Chamber Foundation. Thank you all for joining us today for our complimentary webinar, Growing Small and Local Supplier Partnerships. The North Carolina Chamber is committed to providing the data and insights that strengthen North Carolina's supply chains and drive long-term competitiveness for our state. Whether you're a small or local business looking to grow or sourcing professional working to build a more inclusive and resilient supply chain, we're glad you're here. A few housekeeping items before we hear from our speakers today. If all attendees are muted to avoid any distractions during today's presentation. If time permits, we will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentations. If you'd like to submit a question during the meeting, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, not the chat box. Today's session will be recorded and shared with you in a recap email after the webinar. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jonathan Wilkins, Supplier Diversity Program Executive at Presidio. Jonathan is a nationally recognized expert in supplier diversity strategy. He brings years of experience helping companies unlock innovation and growth through intentional supplier relationships. Today, he'll share how diversifying your supply chain can go beyond compliance to deliver real business value, from operational resilience to workplace satisfaction to bottom line results. Jonathan, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Dana, for the introduction. I really appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here with you all today. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment just to thank the audience for being in attendance. I look forward to the privilege to be able to speak with you today. You see, to me, supply diversity, as we jump in, supply diversity isn't just a line item or a talking point to me. It's really my calling. It's where my passion meets impact. And today I get to share with you why I believe that when done right, supply diversity doesn't just change business outcomes, it changes lives. You have often heard the phrase, it's not personal, it's business. But let me tell you something, that's a lie. That phrase is often thrown out like a shield. You better believe the man who has lost his job and takes it personal, the woman who built a business from the ground up and watched it get swallowed whole, she takes it personal. The small business owner who got left behind in a closed door negotiation, they take it personal. And you know what? So do I. That's why I'm here today, because business is personal and supply diversity, that's personal for me. I didn't get into this work to fill out forms or hit quotas. I stepped into this space to change lives, to open doors, to push back against a system that too often leaves small and diverse businesses fighting for scraps. But before we go any deeper, let me ask you something. When you hear the word supply diversity, what comes to mind? A line on a report, a compliance checkbox to check, a pain point in procurement, or is it something more? For me, it's always been something more. Supply diversity isn't about equity, it's about access. It's about using our influence, our network, and our resources to build a better, more inclusive economy, one vendor, one contract, one opportunity at a time. And when you align supply diversity with DE&I, when you treat it like a strategy instead of a sideline, it doesn't just feel good, it drives innovation, boosts revenue, builds culture, transforms businesses. So today I want us to have a real conversation, not about checking boxes, but about changing the game, about how supply diversity, when done with intention, becomes a force for growth, resilience, and yes, justice. Because in my world, it's business and it's personal. Let's be honest, supply diversity, it sat in the shadows for years. It was the paperwork at the end of the quarter, the box you check so you can move on. It wasn't strategy, it was survival. And nobody made it priority unless someone made you do it. But the game has changed. Today, procurement teams aren't just being measured on cost cutting, they're being judged on value creation. D&I leaders can't just host trainings, they've got to prove results. And every move your company makes is under the microscope. Customers are watching, employees are watching, investors are watching, and they're all asking the same questions. Do you actually walk the talk? Let's talk the numbers, because feeling good doesn't fund the future, but strategy does. According to the Hackett Group's 2025 report, 79% of companies have increased their spend with diverse suppliers, and not because it looks good on a slide. They're doing it because it works, because it wins, because diverse suppliers aren't just names on a list. They're engines of innovation. They're keys to new markets. They are the difference makers. Now let's break that down. Innovation. Diverse suppliers bring something money can't buy, perspective. They see problems differently. They solve creatively. I've seen IT projects go from stall to soaring because a diverse subcontractor stepped in and brought an approach no one else even considered. Not because they were different, but because their lived experience was different. And that's the competitive advantage. The next one is revenue growth. McKinsey's diversity win study shows that companies with high diversity are 36% more likely to outperform their peers on profitability. That's not a rounded area, that's real money. In my own business, we've landed contracts simply because we've demonstrated genuine, measurable commitment to inclusive sourcing. We didn't just talk about supply diversity, we built with it, and it showed. The next one is workplace satisfaction. Let's be real. People notice where you spend your money. When your employees see that your company support diverse-owned businesses, businesses that look like them, that reflect their communities, it hits differently. It builds pride, it builds trust, it builds loyalty. And here's the kicker. According to McKinsey, companies with inclusive cultures have employees who are 87% less likely to leave. That's not just retention, that's retention with purpose. So no, this isn't theory, this is strategy. Supply diversity is not charity, it's clarity. Clarity on what drives results what earns trust, and what sets companies apart in this modern economy. And the ones who get it, they don't just check a box, they change the game. Now let me tell you where the gold is buried. Right now, in too many organizations, supply diversity and D&I are treated like long lost cousins. They're in the same house, but they don't talk. D&I runs workshops, reviewing hiring practices, working on inclusion from the inside. Meanwhile, supply diversity is out here hustling to get three quotes in before the RFP closes on them. But when you bring those two together, that's when the magic happens. That's when strategy turns into synergy. Picture this. D&I isn't just about the internal culture, it's shaping procurement policies. It's baking equity into the way your company sources contracts and measures success. Supply diversity isn't the add-on, it's part of the blueprint. Procurement isn't just writing contracts, it's building futures. Diverse suppliers are given pathways to mentorship, development, and opportunities. They're not just vendors, they're partners in the pipeline. Legal isn't there to just say no, they're saying how. Instead of shutting doors with red tape, they're helping open them responsibly, enabling innovation without crushing small businesses under policies built for giants. That's not just better operations, that's better business with soul. That's what happens when inclusion becomes more than policy. It becomes part of your identity. Because real inclusion doesn't live in a PowerPoint, it lives in your practices, your purchasing, your partnerships. This isn't a DE&I program. This is a cultural shift. And that's where transformation begins. So let's get down to it. How do we make all of this real? Because this isn't magic, this is method. This is why I've developed a blueprint called Connect, Contract, Cultivate. Let me break it down for you. One, connect. Create intentional access points. Let's be clear. You cannot bid on what you can't see. Too many diverse suppliers are locked out, not because they can't compete, because they weren't invited to the table. So we flip the script. We open doors. We share opportunities widely. Visibility isn't charity, it's strategy. Two, contract. Level the playing field. Now, this is where the real work happens because bias, it hides in the fine print. And it's in the RFP language, it's in the sourcing rubrics, it's in capacity thresholds that quietly shut out small firms. So we challenge that. Let us rewrite the rules. We simplify requirements, rethink how we define qualified, and create scaled pathways so that small businesses can get in and stay in. Because equity lives in the details and inclusion requires intention. Three, cultivate. Don't just contract, build. Getting in the door is just a start. The real magic happens after the first deal. We provide mentorship, give transparent feedback. We connect diverse suppliers with executive coaches. and training resources to help them grow. Because when we grow, when they grow, we all grow. This isn't about checking boxes. It's about building an ecosystem, networks of thriving, diverse suppliers that don't just meet spend goals, but reshape industries. And I'll tell you something, when you get it right, you just don't hit the numbers, you build legacy. So let's talk about the reality we're facing right now. We can't ignore the landscape. Right now, D&I and supply diversity are under fire. We're seeing states roll back affirmative action. We're watching corporations quietly scale back their D&I programs. And we're reading headlines about legal battles that are putting equity on trial. But I'll tell you, this is not the moment to shrink. This is not the time to say, maybe we'll wait and see. This is the moment to double down. Why? Because when the noise gets loud, you focus on the facts. Let's hit those facts again. 79% of companies have increased their spend with diverse suppliers, not because they were forced to, but because they saw the results. 36% companies that have higher diversity are 36% more likely to outperform their competitors. Employees are 87% less likely to leave. That's loyalty, that's retention, that's ROI within companies who have inclusive cultures. Let me put it plainly. Diverse suppliers drive innovation, they drive engagement, they drive growth. And here's the kicker. The companies that invest in diversity when it's hard, not just when it's easy, those are the companies that come out stronger, faster, and more resilient. So no, this is not the time to retreat. This is the time to rise, to lead with courage, to build with purpose, to choose strategy over silence. Because when others hesitate, you move forward with intention. That's how you win, not just today, but for the future. So here's my challenge, not just to you, but to me and to all of us. Let's stop treating supply diversity like it's optional, like it's extra, like it's something we'll get to if there's time for it. No, let's treat it for what it really is, a business imperative, a leadership move, a legacy decision. Let's connect the dots between our values and our vendors, between our people and our practices, between what we say in public and what we do behind closed doors. Let's stop letting D&I supply diversity run in separate lanes and start letting them run together like a powerful current, aligned, intentional, and unstoppable. Because supply diversity, it's not just about hitting a target. It's about opening doors that have been closed for too long. It's about building bridges between potential and opportunity. It's about showing the world and our employees, our customers, our communities that we mean what we say. That's how we create access. That's how we accelerate equity. This is how we build businesses that actually reflect the world we live in and the one we want to leave behind. So yes, it's business, but don't get it twisted. It's personal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that insightful presentation. Looking at broadening the supplier base and your supply chain ecosystem is an important lever for competitive advantage. I also liked hearing about how a supplier and a tier one collaboration can lead to innovation, profitability, and sustainability for both. Next, we're excited to bring you a dynamic conversation between two leaders who've lived this work on both sides of the supplier relationship. Joining us are Lindsay Wrege, co-founder and CEO of 321 Coffee, and Gene Fowler, Senior Vice President of Category Management at Foodland. Together, they'll share their firsthand experience and on building and sustaining successful supplier partnerships. We'll explore how to get started, what makes a partnership thrive, and how to navigate challenges along the way. But first, I'd really like to introduce both of these really smart and talented folks with whom I'm excited to have a great conversation. So let's start with Lindsay at 321. If you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself and 321.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay. And like Dana mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of 321 Coffee. We are a Raleigh-based coffee shop and roastery that really focuses on inclusion. So we are really proud to hire and employ over 50 people with different types of intellectual and developmental disabilities. And at 321, they are doing everything from roasting coffee, packing coffee, helping with our supply chain and our order fulfillment, as well as in the shops, working as cashiers, baristas. Yeah, we're a big believer in giving people the opportunity to contribute and letting them, setting the bar high and letting them rise to it.
Great. Gene, let's hear a little bit about your role and Food Lion. Of course, we're familiar with, but.
Thanks, and good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Gene Fowler. I am the Senior Vice President of Merchandising Category Management here at Food Lion. I've been with the company 37 years and I've grown up in the state of North Carolina, so I'm really proud of that fact. My team is responsible for leading the center store category management merchandising, which includes basically everything in the store with the exception of produce, market, and deli. And I do have a peer that manages that, so I absolutely have a connection back in with her. And so, yeah, that's what we do here each and every day. It's cool to be with you. Almost half of our network sits in the state of North Carolina, and that's really important as we think about our neighbors. So I'll stop there and look forward to the conversation.
So I like where both of our speakers today have started. Gene is hitting us with we live in the places where we work, and Lindsay clearly is derivative of this community and inclusive of this community. So I think it's really great. And Gene, you said something when we talked prior to the panel today about supporting our neighbors. Yep. And I really like that concept as we go into this conversation. And you even said further, we want them to be successful as a community, and that to me is a great place to start. When you think about expanding your local, small and regional suppliers. So let's jump into some nitty gritty, because I know there are folks on the webinar today that want to know how we actually do this. So let's start with you, Gene. Let's talk a little bit about Food Lion's process for evaluating and sourcing suppliers and what you think are some of those key success metrics or key success factors that lead to successful partnerships.
Yeah, I think as I think about sourcing local and small suppliers or regional suppliers, what's really important for us is to make sure folks are successful. I've been doing this a little bit, and what I found is folks will come in a bit more aggressive than they might should be. And the last thing I'd want to see happen here at Food Lion is we burden somebody's organization, because that absolutely is not our intent. And so a lot of times we'll have conversations with suppliers that make their way into Food Lion is, let's think about a crawl, walk, run approach.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're successful and that we don't put burden on your business, because I think it is truly a partnership. And so being able to come in with transparency, like what are you able to truly do inside the business, and us understanding you and you understanding us, right? Like what's required from a supply chain perspective. It's not always as easy as one might think. And so there's a host of things that go into it, but access to us is, there's a lot of ways to do that too. Many of you may be familiar with the Flavors of the Carolinas food show. That is one that I think is really cool for not just Food Lion, but for many retailers in the state of North Carolina that gives exposure to a lot of small and local suppliers. There's also, connections in our retail stores. It's very often, I should say, that our store manager are approached by somebody in their community that has a product they can offer, and then it's in turn sent into my department where we have the expectation of responding back to that store leader so that we can provide guidance in one form or fashion. Well, we're going to engage, or this may not be a right fit right now. But we do have those channels and ways to engage with our communities and our small local suppliers.
I mean, I think just hearing that in grocery, in retail, that the no surprises rule still applies to supply chain. Knowing that, like you said, crawl, walk, run leads to them being able to fulfill an order, and you guys to being able to rely that it's going to be fulfilled reliably. Lindsay, let's hear a little bit about your process through crawl, walk, and run, and where are you right now?
Totally. Yes, very appreciative that Food Lion takes that approach, because it is lived out in its practices. So when we first connected with Food Lion, it was in the form of being part of their local racks and their local program. So if you go to Food Lion to look for 3-2-1 coffee, we're not in the standard coffee aisle. There is a rack that is completely dedicated to local and small vendors. And not only is it cool to be physically positioned next to other brands that are growing and are emerging, but it also just is such a approachable way for us to, I mean, working with Food Lion, right? We are in over 500 stores. That is huge. And like hands down, the largest retail partner that we work with. And when we were first talking with them, and again, like Gene and his team live exactly what they're talking about of being transparent and wanting to communicate, look, if we put this product in and every store sells 1 bag a week, 2 bags a week, 1 bag a day, you can do this math. And when you multiply it times 500 stores, this adds up very, very quickly. Even things for us, like this was our first time palletizing our coffee. It was our first time, like, we had to get the pallet bands and the pallet wrap, and it all arrived, and we sort of stared at each other. We're like, do you know how to do this? Like, no, do you know how to do this? YouTube does, right? And so just, yeah, truly so appreciative of Food Lion, and in that process, like having people that were willing to pick up the call, whether it was, our point of contact, who's named Rachel from like the true, like, supply chain, like buyers team, but also even people in the warehouse of like, hey, I can see that this is a certain expectation of how pallets are received. Could you clarify this one thing? And they would answer the call and they would help us so that we could be successful with our first delivery and then subsequent and ongoing deliveries. So we've been selling in Food Lion. I think our product officially hit the store last, like between August and September was when it started going live. So this fall we'll hit our 1 year mark. So I would still consider us a little bit in the crawl phase, but I'm also so appreciative that Food Lion has been also very transparent that like this is a starting point and hopefully there can be some shared successes. And if that's the case, like it doesn't start and stop here. This is the start of more that could come.
Yeah, I like how you've pointed out that the conversations and the connectivity between a supplier and your tier one, procurement are multifaceted. You're not just connecting with your contracts and procurement group. You're literally hitting operations. You're talking about the transfer of product and how these multiple systems, Lindsay, your system, you guys might be building the ship while you sail it. Gene's system is a well-oiled machine, but getting them to work together, if you're not communicating and being direct, I think that's a great thing to point out. I love too to hear modesty from you in saying that you're crawling, because I think, for some entrepreneurs, 500 stores would be a full sprint. So I like that you're taking that to heart. We heard this phrase when we first talked about the competence of supply. And I think that just reminds us that if you're not working together, you really can't rely on this product will be here regularly in the volumes of demand. And I think that also, just from Gene's perspective, I'd love to know a little bit about some of the kind of data or guidance that you give to a newer local and regional supplier to move them along.
Yep. Obviously, we understand categories pretty deeply. Our store base is from Southern Pennsylvania to Georgia. And so understanding how categories perform and the details inside of categories often allow us to give pretty good guidance. So, in the case of working on, I'll use coffee as an example because Lindsay's here. It's no surprise that not only do we have a person that's solely responsible for small and local suppliers, so she helps facilitate the connection and all the things Lindsay articulated, but she also has to understand the category, and we have a category manager that is solely responsible for coffee. And so being able to go deep and understand what how an item could perform, both from, what it is, what the packaging is, understanding the cost that in turn positions the price of the product on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so all of those dynamics go into how we make decisions, because I'm going to keep going back to The last thing I want to do is have somebody ship product that ends up on our shelves and we can't sell it. It's not good for either one of us. It's not good for the partnership.
Yeah.
And so we bring our category experts into the conversation too, as we think about how we partner with small and local suppliers.
That's got to be great information for a growing supplier too, to actually have the wisdom and experience of someone that's in a category, your category. Although, mind you, I don't think I could be in charge of coffee. I feel like I'd be consuming the product too much. Lindsay, let's hear from you a little bit about how some of that guidance has made you think about product development. This morning, and I'll give a quick example. This morning, I went over to our coffee machine and I used our 3-2-1 coffee Keurig.
Let's go.
For whatever the lack of a better word it is, whatever those are called. And but that's different from a bag of coffee, ground, beans, all that stuff. Let me know how that's worked into your product development plans.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, Jean's hit it, the perfect example of like being able to have connection and access to someone who truly knows the industry and knows the industry like within coffee, but knows in the industry of coffee within Food Lion. Because again, when we were gearing up for this, like I remember we had to order a pallet of the boxes that we would case the pack, like there's 6 bags go into a case, the case builds the pallet, we send the pallet. Like we had to order a pallet just of the cases, and like these quantities were and tape that we had to think through, right? It was units of measurement that we had never operated in before. And so to have access to someone who could really give us a good understanding of like, here are comparable brands from a local perspective, here are comparable brands in your price point that are, for us, we are a more specialty, a more premium offering. We could then back into, you're never going to know what happens until the product like truly hits the shelf. But we could prepare in terms of, okay, let's make sure we have enough tape and enough boxes. Let's make sure we have enough green coffee. A lot of these products, especially in food, you want to keep it fresh. And so you don't want to hold a ton of inventory, hoping that an order will come through at some point, because you might be sending product out that's, it could be weeks or months old, but that's not what we want. We want to be sending product that is, freshly roasted so that it can get onto their shelves as quickly as possible and hopefully sell as quickly as possible. But that takes really strategic planning. But again, these teams are able to be partners for us and work together on how to be successful. And then the other thing that we've learned in terms of continuing to grow and develop our brand, and especially as to seeing how does this play within grocery stores. Previously, if you bought a bag of 3-2-1 coffee, you were either buying it from our shop or you were buying it from our website. In both places, you had a lot of awareness as to like who we are, what we stand for, what our mission is. But now all of a sudden you could be in any part of North Carolina, stumble upon the local rack, see this bag of coffee and learn about 3-2-1, which from a mission and exposure perspective is incredible. But one of the things we realized is that our packaging only talked about our mission on the back. Because previously we could keep the front very clean, very aesthetic, very focused on the logo. And it didn't matter because someone had already learned about the mission. But a couple months in, and even just hearing people reach out to us on the website saying like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Like I was in Food Lion and I happened to pick up a bag and I happened to turn it over and I read the story and I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's when we were like, light bulb, oh my gosh, we need to rethink our packaging to really lead with the story and make sure that that is visible on the front. And how can we, collaborate with the Food Lion team on some different communications and promotions that can be supported from a storytelling aspect. And again, having the Food Lion team that's been so receptive to being a partner. And again, like the goal is shared success, because if both parties can win, then we can just keep growing together.
This was like as if you wrote my segue here, and telling a story and the storytelling element here is such an important part of not just your product and your marketing, but really of starting that supplier relationship. And I know you learned a lot about telling your story in that fine entrepreneurship program that you were a part of over at the North Carolina State University. But let's hear kind of how you learned to tell your story and make that pitch. And I'd love to know both from your experience, what you felt was the right way to develop the pitch, and then of course from Gene, what really resonates and what are the kinds of things that in a pitch, in an opportunity to learn about a brand, your interest is piqued.
Totally. Yeah. So we started 321. We were students at NC State. We came from very humble beginnings. Like our first ever version of 321 was a folding table. We had a big, carafe of coffee that our first event, we bought it from Starbucks. And then eventually we thought we were big shots because we had our own coffee maker that we bought at Target, right? It was just very true, humble beginnings. But that mission was a part of us from day one. And so as we grew, we got a lot of practice of just telling the story, leveraging community, leveraging word of mouth, and telling what we were doing, but most importantly, why we were doing it. And over the past 8 years, we have evolved significantly. I'm really proud of the traction that we've been able to gain, the milestones we've been able to hit. So we've now got 5 locations across the triangle. We've earned national media attention. Truly, the fact that we are in over 500 Food Lions is just such an incredible thing to think about, especially when you really see the photos of how it all started. And something that we are always thinking about is when describing 321 Coffee, the mission is really important to us. And the quality is really important to us. And how do we make sure that we are communicating both? Because I'm very aware and I acknowledge that disability often has a stigma that means often associated with less than. And part of what we want to demonstrate is that it does not mean less than, and you can drink an excellent bag of coffee, and we can work with top tier retailers, and we can palletize, and we can get it to your distribution center, and we are a viable business that is also doing good in the process. And so finding that balance of we are a great business and we are working hard and we want to earn the right to do business with you, and in doing so, we want to make a really big impact in the process. Those 2 elements are really critical. And in talking with Food Lion specifically, I was just so appreciative when being transparent that we haven't done this before and we want to work hard and we want to figure it out, but there are things that we are gonna need to ask questions about, or maybe take a little extra time in working on it. And it's not to say that we can't do it. It's just to say, this is our first time. And again, just so appreciative that Food Lion was willing to listen and to be understanding. And we've come a long way since then.
Well, Gene, clearly the pitch caught your attention and clearly it's working. But tell me what you're looking for in a pitch, and tell us a little bit about what it's like to be on the purchasing side.
Yeah, I mean, that was awesome, by the way, Lindsay. So I think about a few things. First and foremost, it goes without saying, food safety is critical. So if I didn't start with that piece and making sure that how we produce products, how products are produced that we sell in our stores, and understanding the food safety component to that, being really clear on that, it is paramount. And so that's just, when we're working with more small and regional local suppliers, that is just something I couldn't stress enough. In your pitch, but transparency matters. Like Lindsay spoke to that, like the transparency of where they were. I'm guessing, and I don't know this to be fact, but Lindsay choosing to go to a 6-pack was probably influenced by us saying that's probably the right case count.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but I'm guessing on my team that they said 6 counts per, you can't go to a 4 and you don't need to be at a 12. So 6 is probably the right corrugated box for you to purchase. And so, but transparency matters. The supply and the commitment to sell. So there's got to be a commitment on both ends to sell, but it can't just be one-sided. And so what does that look like, knowing that maybe the margins or the profit is going to be compressed initially to get the trial? Maybe it's not. Maybe it just, because of what that product's all about, it just sells. But it's really understanding that, because we both, when working with small and local suppliers, we have to have a commitment to sell and not just high-five each other once it makes it on the shelf. So those are really important pieces for me, Dana, when I think about it.
I really want to hit something you just said, and I think this is, again, just a smooth segue. You guys are making this easy on me. But you're talking about maybe this will sell. Like, this is a big gamble that Lindsay's going after and that you guys are taking with shelf space that is a limited commodity. Shelf space is not infinite. And especially as you see SKU proliferation, man, that's hard this morning. I might need some more 3-2-1 coffee. Seeing this as where is it going to sell, and knowing your communities and knowing the demand and what kind of products sell in a community, let's pivot and hear a little bit more from Eugene right off the bat on how you get to know your communities and how you think that Food Lion really reflects those dynamics in that community.
Yeah, I'll start with a comment and then I'll get into that. At Food Lion, we fundamentally believe we're the towns and cities we serve. We're down the block from you because we're like you. And that's real for us. You don't put 500-ish stores in the state and not feel part of the community.
Yeah.
And this is where we started. This is our heritage. So we absolutely believe that. I think as it relates to representing that, sometimes our supplier base is as simple as a 5-store footprint in a local town, because this supplier really resonates with that community. Sometimes it's able to go big, like Lindsay described with 3-2-1 Coffee, and be able to cover the state. There are varying degrees on how we choose to approach various businesses in our state. And so I think it's important for us to understand that not everybody will be prepared, or maybe we're not prepared, because it has to be a two-way street to go 500 stores with suppliers, even though somebody may want that. That just might not be the case. And the last thing I'll leave you with, Dana, is you hit on it. Food Lion stores aren't the largest supermarkets in the cities. They're by far, in some cases, some of the smaller supermarkets in our cities. And so with that comes very limited shelf space. And we do have the local rack, which is phenomenal, and we're continuing to evolve that and redesign it. So Lindsay, I don't know if you've seen the new ones, but they're a little bigger. And so they'll be coming to a store near you. But in general, whether it's on our shelves or on our floor, our sales floor, the space is limited. And so we have to be very mindful of choices we make. And it doesn't mean, if we have to say no, it doesn't mean forever. But in some cases, we have to say no. And so I just really want to be clear on that.
Let's hear just from Lindsay, from your perspective. You can sell 3-2-1 Coffee in Raleigh and the Triangle, and you've got a really solid base here. What do you know about markets in small towns in Georgia and in Pennsylvania and anywhere in that Food Lion footprint? I'd love to know how you've learned from Gene and his team how to approach other markets. And I think we heard a little bit about packaging, but tell me a little bit more about that.
Totally. And first, though, I just want to call out Gene's comment on like the ability that Food Lion, like maybe it's a local vendor that goes into 500 stores, maybe it's a local vendor that goes into 4 stores. Like, that's an intentional decision that Food Lion is choosing to be receptive to. And if you think about the supply chain in a grocery store, there must be hundreds, if not thousands, of brands in any singular store. And as soon as you add the layer that like not all of them are in all 1,200 stores or however many Food Lions there are, like that just adds another layer of people that they need to communicate with, people that are calling them and asking them questions because they're local small vendors and they've never done this before, invoices that need to be sent and tracked down if they go unpaid, product to move through warehouses. Like, that is such an admirable decision that truthfully comes at a ton of added logistics and layers on Food Lion's infrastructure. But I think, we heard from Jonathan earlier about like the intentionality that you can choose to take with how you run your business. And I think it's such a great thing to see Food Lion like taking on that extra complexity of their infrastructure in order to use their shelf space for good. And I think it's something that we can all learn from within our own businesses on like, what is our parallel that we can take that like might be a little more challenging, might be a little bit more complicated, but it also hopefully comes with some really strong culture add and payback in terms of how you grow and run your business. So Jean, kudos. Dana, your question on growth and expansion. Yeah, 321, it has a very great and strong brand awareness in the Triangle. But again, until Food Lion, if you were not located in the Triangle, your only option of buying 321 coffee was to go to our website and buy online. And so that meant that you probably ended up finding us from a news article or a social media post or some sort of digital presence. Maybe it was word of mouth. But now there's a new way of discovering 321, which is awesome. But it also means that it is not enough to just like let, the Food Lion truck take it to the store. It ends up on the shelf and hopefully someone feels inspired to pick up that bag and decide to buy it. And so a huge thing that we have leaned into from the recommendation of Food Lion was how to drive trial. So how to encourage someone to test the product, pick it up, read the story, learn about it, maybe go to the website, maybe scan a QR code, maybe follow on social media, but hopefully take it home. And then what we felt confident in is once you learn about this, once you try this, I believe in the quality, I believe in the product, I believe in the brand, I believe in the story, and therefore I believe you will try it again and you will go out of your way to purchase it a second time and a third time. And so leading into promotions, looking at way to get it on sale to lower the risk to a buyer. Ideally, when it goes on sale, it has the like bright yellow label that all of us are intrinsically going to pay attention to, because it means you're getting something at better value than you normally would. And so, that's a big thing. But then again, because we've got this added mission and added layer, Food Lion has also been receptive to, okay, how do we really be intentional about putting this on sale? Yes, just in general, but also when it aligns with different awareness events. So March 21st, the date is 321. It's globally recognized as 321 Day and Global Down Syndrome Awareness Day. And so that was another opportunity that Food Lion was like, yeah, we not only do we want to put this on sale, but we then want to couple this with some different storytelling within their newsletters and some of their signage about why it's on sale, why 321 Day matters, why this vendor is significant with respect to 321 Day. April is Autism Awareness Month. We're coming up on July with Disability Pride Month. Like there's different times in the year where you've got a little bit more of a reason to talk about some of these intentional parts of the story. And Food Lion has been receptive to doing that. And then on top of that, speaking of like specifically 321 Day, both Food Lion and the NC Chamber, they were a big part of bringing our 321 Day conference to life. So not only did they, want to see this type of education and conversation come, but both of you all were really bought into, I also want my team to be in this room. I want my team to be learning about what's happening with 321 Day, having these conversations with other people that are in the room, and again, just living their values. So thank you both.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I want to call out some connectivity here between Jonathan's comments too, because, we really heard from him that this supply base, and especially a diverse supply base, can provide a reason for customers to seek out your business for purchase and, to go to Food Lion. And, I know early in the days of Howling Cow ice cream from NC State, where can we get it? You can get it at Food Lion. It's a reason to go. You can get 321 at Food Lion. It's a reason to go. I'd also love to hear, Jean, from your perspective, as you guys engage with local and regional and smaller suppliers, how, and this again gets back to Jonathan's comments, how a supplier can be a skunk works for you to try new things, to examine new products, to think about innovation in that space. I think that's an interesting perspective that we heard from Jonathan, that adds to that competitive advantage. But how has that worked for Food Lion to find smaller local providers and then realize there's more room in this space for growth?
Yeah, I know here at Food Lion, we've worked with many small local suppliers to bring them out of the ground per se. In some cases, simply having an idea of what they're wanting to create and not understanding all the ways to get there. And so that plays out in a lot of spaces. I mean, Lindsay spoke of some of the things we've helped them with, but I've seen it as much as like helping somebody understand what it's required to get a barcode.
Yeah.
And what are some of the other certifications and opportunities that an individual needs to go through. We've partnered with folks, and I was thinking of a lemonade supplier in one of our areas and bringing that product to life and what's required to do that. And the person really wanting to go big, and we're going, no. Like, let's take our time with this and let's really understand what's possible.
Yeah.
And what's the right, what price point can you hit and still where you can still make money, and we can make money, because that's important too. So there's a lot of pieces, Dana, that go into it. We have nurtured relationships in many states. North Carolina is just one. We have similar local and small business programs that my person manages, again, in the state of Pennsylvania, in every state we operate in, I should say. And so that local rack that you see in Food Line, when you go to South Carolina, you're going to see the similar one, but it's going to be more representative of South Carolina folks.
And there's going to be like mustard in the barbecue sauce, which I
There
don't.
probably will be
even as a
mustard
native
barbecue sauce for
South
sure.
Carolinian, I don't understand that, but
That's absolutely the truth. And when you get up to Maryland, you're going to see some stuff that ties back to seafood and crabs.
Old Bay on everything.
So, yep. So there you go.
So I love that you can bring new products. You said something that I wanted to hit on, and this is again a nitty-gritty kind of thing for a growing supplier, a local supplier to think about: certifications. Let's hear a little bit about your experience in looking for and really, you said this earlier, certifications matter. Tell us a little bit more about that, Gene.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can get to the regulatory certifications that are required first and foremost, and things, people have to go through and make sure they pass the food safety and various other things. And then there's other pieces that tie to local diverse suppliers and how are they certified inside of that arena. I think that's another space that's important for folks to consider. It's not by no means is it required, but it absolutely is something that folks should consider. And so those are a couple of things that come to my mind, Dana, on that topic.
Let's talk a little bit too about, again, someone has a great idea, or they're crawling already. They've got some of these important certifications. They've got their pitch. I know you mentioned a conference earlier. Tell us a little bit more about ways that local and small suppliers can connect with Food Lion.
Yeah. So we do, like I shared the Flavors of the Carolinas. It's a local food show it is predominantly North Carolina products by the Department of Ag. They put that on.
Yeah.
And so that's a great one, in my opinion, because you get visibility. Now, they may say, oh my gosh, you just sent us a bunch of folks, but they can figure it out. But it's great because it's not just Food Line. It gives exposure to retailers across the state. So your Harris Teeters and your Lowe's Foods, et cetera, are present at that conference or food show. We receive information from our store leaders quite frequently, whether it's on something we didn't do well, or if there's a person that they get approached by in their store that says, hey, I have this thing, and they may ask us to consider it. And so then it'll come through what we call a voice of retail. It makes it to my team, and we have 24 hours to get back to that person and let them know what our plan is, and whatever that concern is, or opportunity is, I should say. So that's another facet by which we learn. And sometimes that information will go to one of our merchandising specialists and make its way into my team and category. But we do have processes out there that gives us access to folks. Honestly, sometimes if you're already in another retailer, we spend time in competition, surprise, surprise, and would like to see, like, who's selling what. And might there be an item we're missing that maybe Lowe's Foods is selling, as an example. And so that's another way we source product. And then there's also the old word of mouth. And so how that passes through is also another way that we get information on small and local suppliers.
So, I love that you have all these connection points, and I think that's really important, especially just to meet local small suppliers where they are along that crawl, walk, run. I know things don't always go well. I know you've said, Gene, like we might not always say yes. So like when my kid runs up to the store manager at Food Lion over here in Raleigh and says, "Hey, I got an idea. What about candy for breakfast?" He's gonna say no. She's gonna say no. We'll go with that. Other pitfalls that a supplier has to think about, or that you, Gene, have experienced with suppliers along this progression. I'd love to hear some common pitfalls that you think folks may not have hit yet, but should be aware of. And Lindsay, as an entrepreneur, there's 1,000 pitfalls. So let me start with you on some of those.
Yeah.
Tell us about your scars.
Been doing this a little bit, as I said earlier, and I've seen a lot. And so I think one of the bigger things for me is the overpromise and underdelivery. And it shows up in a lot of different ways. And the worst thing somebody can do is step into that space as a small local supplier.
Yeah.
Because not only do you put your business at risk, you put the relationship at risk. And so I would often say, under promise and over deliver. And let's work together to figure out how that continues to build the flywheel. And I've seen things where it's, all of a sudden the manufacturing of whatever they're producing or the co-packers not prioritizing them. And that quickly turns into a relationship that's not, if I say I'm going to purchase your product, I expect to receive it when I write a purchase order.
Yeah.
It's really that simple, right? And I know stuff happens, but consistently I expect, barring a small disruption, when I write a purchase order, I expect when I write it for, it shows up at whether it's direct store delivery, through a distributor, or through my warehouse. I expect to receive it. It's really that simple.
So I like that you highlight transparency and really modesty, because modesty is not a core characteristic of entrepreneurship. You have to believe in yourself and your mission so much that all of the no's, you're dodging all of the no's.
Right.
Lindsay, tell us a little bit about what that experience has been like, and what you think some of the relevant sort of pitfalls are relevant here.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the premise of modesty and just knowing, like, until you're in it, there's so much that you don't know that you don't know. And Dana, you're right that like as an entrepreneur growing any small business, you've got to be resilient, and you've got to, I'm such a sucker for this. Like, oh, someone said it's going to take you 2 years to open brick and mortar. Like, no way. We're figuring out how to do this in a year, right? Like, but I can acknowledge that there are things that, like, when people have done this before, that nope, it's gonna take you 2 years or whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah.
And so being willing to learn and being willing to listen and to ask questions, huge pitfall for us. Again, like, you don't know what you don't know. Our first delivery, it was for 6 pallets. I already shared some of the like stress that went into it of like, oh my gosh, we need more tape. And I never thought we would need this much tape. I didn't think we would need this many shipping labels, because each pallet needed or each case on each pallet needed a label, shrink wrap, all of that stuff. But then what we weren't thinking about, when we should have been, was the physical actual delivery of the pallets. So I just assumed, because every time we have delivered coffee to anyone, we've stick it in, for a while it was literally in the back of my car, my sedan. I drive over to the office, I walk it in, I give it to the front desk, and I wave goodbye, and I'm on my way. And I knew that I wasn't going to have to drive to all 500 Food Lions, thank God. But Food Lion was willing to work with us on like, what if you can, like, you get it to the distribution center. We don't work with a distributor at this point in our business. And so they were willing to let us like own the physical, getting the product to the distribution center, and then it would get loaded onto what I'm assuming is the Food Lion truck and make its way to the Food Lion store. So I again just assumed, like, I knew the pallets weren't going to fit in the back of my sedan, but I figured we would just, we've got a truck, and we would just put it onto the truck, and we would drive over at some point on a nice Friday afternoon and unload it and be on our way. And that Friday came around, and Gene's laughing because he knows that this distribution center receives product starting at like 8 p.m. and runs through the wee hours of the day because it's 24/7. And also, by the way, you need to schedule an appointment time. And by the way, your appointment time might be for 7 p.m., but that doesn't mean you actually don't like back into the dock until 9 p.m. And it takes about 4 hours. And typically you're in a big tractor trailer where like the cab removes from the truck. And so then the cab can go wherever. Well, we don't have the CDL license. We aren't in the cab. We're in our little rented enterprise truck because the 6 pallets were too big for our van. And so there we are at midnight, sitting in the lobby of the receiving building, became great friends with the 2 women, welcoming all of the vendors throughout the night. And then around 3 a.m., they finished unloading, and we drove back, and we said, we are never doing this again. We will find a partner to own that leg of the distribution process. But again, like, you don't know until you don't know. Yeah. And part of the entrepreneurialism in founders is just this drive of, I will figure this out, even if it means that 5 hours of my random Friday night last summer were sitting at midnight in the Butner, North Carolina distribution center lobby.
So I think maybe I hit the wrong adjective when I said confident. Stubborn? Stubborn is perhaps the word.
I mean, listen, my co-founder, Michael, he was driver of the truck. Thank God it was not raining, because he was like, this thing is giant and so hard. But the most impressive part was that he first try did in fact back it up and into the receiving bay at the distribution center, which we were all shocked by. And the other benefit, or the thing that was awesome, I'm on the phone with the person from the distribution center, like getting ready for our midnight arrival. Like at this point, I've like come to terms with this is what's happening. And she says, yeah, great. Like, as long as you've got the pallets on the truck and you've got your safety vests, we'll see you at midnight. And I was like, safety vests? Well, you need to wear a safety vest. So we bought our safety vests and we had them on, and we didn't, it all went well, but yes.
You might have also been, UPS used to say that's logistics. You might have also been one of the most like compliant providers that night. So I'm sure that Gene is in his distribution center is familiar with all kinds of, complications.
I think we had the nicest pallets ever sent to Food Lion.
Well, I think, really thinking about it, distribution, we talked about distribution is a huge challenge to understand the nuance of distribution. And Gene, I know you spoke a little bit about giving some advice and some guidance for a small and local provider to recognize, should we be pursuing a distribution relationship? Should we be managing that ourselves? Gene, tell us a little bit about how you've coached that and where you feel like that's a part of your role.
Yeah, I mean, we do that, quite honestly. We not only do that with small local suppliers, we do that with medium to some cases larger suppliers.
Yeah.
And so we do think it's important to understand what channel is most effective based on the product. And what I mean by channel is it coming through a distributor? Is it coming direct store? Is it slotted in our full case warehouse, or is it slotted in Butner where Lindsay's product is? For those that don't know, our Butner facility is more of a piece pick facility. That allows us, but in case of Lindsay, it ships to all 1,110 stores. But in the case of Lindsay, we're able to then micro it down to just North Carolina. But down the road, I'm assuming we're going to work together to make this product very successful. But it also gives a channel then to open that up if we choose to. So there's many different channels to bring products into the Food Lion stores, and my team's responsible for figuring out which one's best, and so we coach people up on that.
So I love that you and your team, your knowledge, your expertise, that's an asset in this process. Softball here,
Yep.
how do folks get in touch with your team?
Yeah, on our website, I think this is going to be posted at the end. We have a link on the Food Lion website that points to small and local suppliers. So it's just another way to access us. I did not bring that up earlier, but it is absolutely available on our website in addition to some of the other avenues I've shared with folks. But that's probably the easiest way as it comes in, and then it'll make its way to my team.
Yeah, I wanted to get into the nitty gritty, how we actually do that, because I think if we don't talk about this, it's too simple and it's too easy. And tell me, Lindsay, has this been easy?
No.
No, nothing good. You know, what do we say? We didn't do this because it was easy. We thought we did this because we thought it would be easy. I feel like we've learned a
Dana,
ton.
sorry to interrupt you, but what I
Yeah.
also want to stress to folks, at Food Lion, it would be easier for us just to work with large suppliers. So I just really want to be transparent that there's a lot of work that my team takes on that because we think it's important. So I just want to, like, we
Yeah.
value small and local suppliers. We think it's important to be a part of the communities that we serve. And it requires more work than working with a Kraft Heinz or a Procter & Gamble or fill in the blank. And we're good with that because it matters in our communities. It matters to our brand Food Lion. So I want to play that out on both sides.
Yeah, it's a decision you're making to invest and participate in these local economies. I mean, I think that reflects what you said earlier. We are in your neighborhood. We are your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Let me segue into our question and answer period. I'd love to welcome Jonathan back on screen. And I'm going to start with the question in the chat. And Gene, it's coming to you again. And I think it continues on from your previous statement, but you talked about voice of retail, and the question in the chat asks, do Food Lion employees and their recommendations play a role in bringing small and local suppliers to your shelves?
Yeah, it could. It absolutely could. I mean, like I said, typically that'll get to the store manager. So I just want to be clear on, our associate base in the store could be anywhere from 50 to over 100. But historically, that feedback comes in through the store manager and then makes its way into my team. And again, we'll get back whether we're going to pursue it or not. So I say it could. It's hard for me to say, yeah, everyone will be vetted out because that would be false.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Well, Jonathan, welcome back. I think all of three of you have presented really some perspective on why having local, small, diverse suppliers are a supply chain advantage, why they're a competitive advantage. I'd love to also kind of continue with the chat. We've got one more question in the chat. Lindsay, what criteria do you use for researching stores that would be a good fit for your brand? And after we ask you that, I'd like to turn to Jonathan and Gene to say, where do you see at a store level or as a tier 1 level, where this kind of plays out and why this matters? And I think we'll hear more of what you've said. But Lindsay, if you'll start there.
Yeah, totally. Having a local program is a huge, green light, gold star. That is someone, specifically when it comes to grocery and retail, that to me, that signifies they are intentional, they care, and they probably have somebody that I can hopefully find my way to getting in touch with and on a phone call with or a Zoom or whatever. So that is first and foremost what I look for. There are other things are they going to require you to have a distributor? Is there a certain distributor or broker that we're going to need to work with? Have we ever heard of these names before? Do we know someone there, right? These are layers that it doesn't mean it's a hard no, but it does mean that, okay, in order for me to even have a shot at working with fill in the blank company, I've got some homework to do in order to be ready for that. And then it's right, okay, what does that process look like? Is that where I want to start? Do I maybe put a pin in that and circle back later? What's the store count, right? So Food Lion is awesome. We're in the 500. Whole Foods, we're in 6. And that is just the difference of like how, things start. And hopefully, if we can perform well in 6, then we can accomplish the next concentric circle. So things like that. Margin targets are really helpful. Whenever it's able in like different categories, being able to understand like what their target is from a margin perspective, because then we can back into some numbers of like, oh my God, like there was one company that came to us and they said, their target margin was significantly higher than any other grocery store or retail partner that we had ever talked with. And I started crunching the numbers on like, even if we really sacrificed our margin, like the coffee was going to be selling for like $25 in order for them to achieve that. And it was like, okay, I don't feel good about putting our product on the market at $25.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
believe
definitely
it's
like the
yeah.
wrong signal.
Exactly. So to me, like that is just like, I get that that's where you're going for, and that's awesome when you can find a vendor that can work with you for that, but we're not the right vendor for that.
I like that you're being honest there as well. And I think that's something, that transparency, that collaborative experience is important. Jonathan, tell us a little bit on your perspective. I want to welcome you back into this chat here.
Thank you, guys. So from my perspective, that tier 1 usage is important, right? Because I'm in a very fortunate position in supply diversity, but oftentimes it's dictated to me and to my sales team that we include diverse suppliers when we're going out to bid for opportunities, right? So we are, so I'm not the supply diversity manager that's running around chasing procurement, trying to get them to think about utilizing a diverse or a small business in the opportunity. My sales team is actually tracking me down, so I'm very fortunate with that. The benefit is a lot of times that those requirements say local, all right, which is huge to the economy that we are supporting. I'm much like the panel here. I'm from Raleigh originally, so this is near and dear to my heart that we continue to support our small and diverse businesses. We know that they're the growth engine of the economies that we see. Lindsay, my wife, and her colleague often go to 321 to have a business meeting. So I can't wait to tell her that I was on the call with you, because she loves the coffee shop. She loves what you guys are doing in the community, and I think we have to be intentional. I go back to that word, and I'll use it often: the intentionality of making sure that we're including small and diverse businesses in those opportunities. It's the absolute most fun part of the job to see someone like Lindsay start small, grow. Amazing to be in 500 stores and now expanding to other reaches throughout the country, right? That is what we want to see. We want a company to move from small to large. We want to get them out of that small category. And that is the highlight of doing this business. But I also tell suppliers, do not pass by the tier 2 spend, right? Just because you can't do direct business with my company or with Food Line doesn't mean that you might not have a relationship that you could partner with somebody else, even on this call, to expand your business, your footprint, right? I often say tier 2 money is green too. So do not walk past it, right? Leverage those relationships. And a lot of times, small business to small business or MBE to MBE spend happens, and that's where the capacity can be built and grow from there and expand that portfolio.
Well, it's also nice too that a tier 2 supplier can leverage their experience with the network, with the systems, with how you do business with that tier 1, and guide in some way the ways Food Line does directly, guide your small and local businesses on how you do business, how you integrate your product into the marketplace. I love that you point out that intermediary supplier as a possible customer and a possible partner. So thank you for that. Gene, let us hear a little bit of your thoughts on that. Oh, you're on mute though.
You'd think I'd learn not to do that after all these years. I don't want to be very repetitive. I love what Jonathan said about the tier 2. I think that is like spot on. But for me, again, it's just who we are. And I think about the communities that we serve. And I can't think of a better way than if somebody's known for something in their neighborhood, i.e. a town and city, like why wouldn't we want to figure out how to do that? And so like, why wouldn't we? And again, I'm going to keep going back to, and we have to be selective.
Yeah.
Because depending on, like, if you're in upstate of South Carolina, you'll have mustard-based barbecue sauce coming out your nose because everybody's got one. And so I just really want to be, be very transparent. We have to be smart about what we can and can't do. But I shouldn't say, and I fundamentally do believe there's opportunities in each town to do what we've done with Lindsay, to start in a conversation, create a relationship, create an understanding of one another, and then figure out what's the next step. And whether it's 5 stores, 10 stores, 150 stores, or 500, that would be for us in a partnership to determine. Yeah, and so that's the way I think about it, Dana. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I love it that you think about it's more than just this sort of a brand and a retail store in the community. They're a place you're going to connect with community products, and community products reflect where they come from. They have that story that, Lindsay shared in her context, but almost all of these have a great story. I think
Well,
this
and
is a
Dana,
great, oh, sorry.
I just want to chime in there. Like literally yesterday, on all of our packaging, we feature different people on our team. So part of our revised packaging is we've got like sketches and stuff on the front, but on the back we feature really prominently one person, their name, their quote, their sketch. And it's it's on our team, like it is a huge point of pride. And literally yesterday, one of our baristas, his name is Sam, he is on Greater Good, which is our special coffee in partnership with NC State University. Go Pack. He and his family were driving to North Carolina to Virginia to go visit some family, and they wanted to bring a gift. And so they were like, oh my gosh, before we cross the border, let's stop into Food Lion. Hopefully they've got some bags of Greater Good that we can then bring and share with our family. And so they stop in and they end up striking up conversation with some of the grocery team in Food Lion and getting to introduce themselves and 321, but specifically, right? Like, look at this bag, turn it over, like that's me. And Sam in particular, he's actually married to one of our other baristas and roasters, Sophie, and she's on the Uplift bag, which is our dark roast. And so all of the team, Gene, the store team, boots on the ground team, they ended up buying up every single bag that was on the local rack. Sam autographed all of them for them to bring home. And like, Gene, Dana, you talk about like the intentionality of like being in the community and representing the community. And when you do that, like these are the really special moments for everyone that comes from that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is awesome. I love too that you pointed out something I read about you guys right now, and I love that Gene's a part of facilitating this and the quality of the product, which is what you led with to start with. You've got a wait list of hundreds of people who want to be a part of your company. And I think that when we see a market growth behind a quality product that, like you said, also has this positive community impact in workforce, that's our thing around here too. So
100%.
Really, these are all positive outcomes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and like, when Food Lion orders, like I go back to that first order of the 6 pallets and it was like, oh my gosh, we've never done anything to this scale. Like, we found ourselves saying like, this is so much work, but we recognize like, this is so much work in a really good way, right?
Yeah.
Like that means we need to roast thousands of pounds of coffee, which means that we get to schedule people to work those hours and put it in the bags and tape the boxes together and stuff it and wrap it, right? Like all of that is good. And so yes, for us, thank you for recognizing the wait list. We say all the time, our work isn't done. Like we're really proud to have as many stores as we do and companies that we're able to partner with and people that we're able to employ. But yeah, we've got over 500 people on a wait list who want to work at 321 that we don't currently have capacity for. So every time you buy a bag in Food Lion or a company decides to carry 321 in their break room, right? That is directly translates to more work needs to be done, which eventually means we get to hire more people.
Love it. I love it. I don't think I could pick a better way to wrap up what I think has been a really great presentation from Mr. Wilkins, from conversation here around actual relationships, productive relationships. So thank you. Thank you to our speakers and to each of you for joining us this morning. We hope you leave today with practical insights and inspiration to grow your network and your supplier relationships within those small and local networks with diverse suppliers. This is more than about compliance. We heard that earlier. It's about building a connected, innovative, and competitive North Carolina. We also have additional webinars and events coming up soon, so definitely visit the NC Chamber website for more details on those. But again, thank you to this outstanding group of professionals out there doing real good work, capital G good work, profitably and sustainably. Thanks to our events team here at NC Chamber for helping us put on a spotless event again, and for everyone who joined us today in participating. We'll follow up with an email and additional information, and then we hope to see you on our next web engagement or our next in-person event. Thank you all.
Thank you.